Greetings, loyal subjects of the Imperium of Man. I am Librarian Elias of the Adeptus Astartes. I am creating a series of recordings with the intent of educating the general populace of the dangers of the galaxy. All of this information comes from the Lexicanum, provided to me by the Adeptus Mechanicus. I will be reading verbatim from their archives. This recording will cover one of the many foes the Imperium faces. Primarch of the 4th Legion, Perturabo. Perturabo is the Primarch of the Iron Warriors, one of the original 20 Space Marine legions. Bitter and feeling marginalized by the Imperium, he sided with Horus during the Horus Heresy, and has since ascended to demonhood. He, like his Iron Warriors, had a natural affinity towards technology and a cold logic, but lacked the strength of faith. According to Perturabo himself, he is estimated to have been born around 792 M30. When the Primarchs were scattered to the ends of the galaxy, Perturabo landed on a planet named Olympia. For at least a year, he was alone in the rural regions of Olympia and became a famed wanderer that would slay legendary beasts. However, he was first discovered climbing the mountains below the city-state of Logos with no memory of anything prior. The gods, having realized this was no normal child, brought him before the Demikos, the tyrant of Logos. Demikos was intrigued by the child and brought him into his house and treated him as family. Demikos noticed the boy's overwhelming intellect and skill with everything from architecture to the arts to political debate to combat, and he became a wonder with which Logos secured alliances with other city-states. The young Perturabo, though he knew he was not of this world and was made by design as to oppose nature, was disgusted by the religious Olympians and believed in the cold logic of science and reason. Supposedly, Perturabo never trusted the Olympians and refused to return any affection given by Demikos. Demikos spent plenty of time with his new son, but never got anything in return. Perturabo shunned his siblings Heracon and Andos and only enjoyed the company of his foster sister, Caliphany. Many saw Perturabo as a cold and brooding child, but when considered that he had been thrown into a world with no idea of his origins or purpose, this is perhaps a little harsh. Nonetheless, Perturabo took the name not of venerated Olympian heroes, as was expected of nobility, but rather an ancient title for those with prodigious ability. Perturabo waged wars against rivals for his adopted father, and due to many warring city-states of Olympia gathered enormous experience in siege warfare. Overseeing the construction of many siege engines once thought technologically impossible on the planet, Perturabo soon scored victory after victory and became known as a merciless, bloody-handed warlord. Throughout his life, Perturabo was haunted by visions and feelings of a great maelstrom, though he told no one of it as he feared it would be seen as a sign of weakness. When the Emperor arrived, Perturabo immediately submitted himself to the Emperor's mercy and ousted the tyrant of Logos. Demikos is said to have spent his remaining few years gathering forces to attempt to retake his power. He failed, but created a current of unrest which would be used later. Perturabo spent much time with his brother Magnus on Terra in his early days in the fledgling Imperium, attempting to discover the many secrets of mankind's past, and became particularly interested in the works of famous inventors. It became said that of all the Emperor's sons, Perturabo had the most raw scientific and technological knowledge. Upon taking command of his legion, Perturabo reviewed the war record of his new forces. After heavily analyzing their record, effectiveness, doctrines, and practices, Perturabo found them wanting. His punishment was the decimation. By lottery, 1 in every 10 legionaries was chosen to be beaten to death by his comrades. Such would be Perturabo's reign, brutal and unforgiving. Perturabo went on to lead his new Iron Warriors on a lightning crusade against the planet of Justice Rock and its heretical black judges. During the Great Crusade, Perturabo established himself as efficient and highly capable, but also brutal, bitter, and envious. It is widely acclaimed that Perturabo was envious of Rogel Dorn. He was annoyed by his constant reminders of the perfection of his defenses on Terra. The other Primarchs also kept Perturabo at a distance. This might have been because of his supreme command of technology, far in advance of anything the other Primarchs could do. He is referred to as the comrade who devised the best plan to avoid the defenses of Ardog Mashog, an Orc war boss under the attack by Leman Russ, leader of the Space Wolves, and Jagatai Khan, Khan of the White Scars. The Iron Warriors went on to create citadels throughout the regions they fought in. Small numbers of Iron Warriors were left behind at these outposts, but Perturabo resented being forced to split his army. As time went on, they were stereotyped as being the best army for sieges and garrisons, but eventually the Iron Warriors were so worn out that they simply began to enjoy the killing they had to do after the trenches were dug. A particularly vicious campaign was against the Hrud in the Skatrada Deeps, a region that Perturabo saw as strategically useless. Nonetheless, he dutifully oversaw the purging of the Hrud, despite his legion's heavy casualties, as it was ordered by the War Council. At the climax of the campaign, as his fleet lay devastated by a Hrud temporal shockwave, Perturabo could only blame the Emperor's vanity for the damage done to his sons on this useless campaign. It might as well have been Horus who kept the Legion on this role, allowing him to more easily sway the mind of Perturabo towards chaos. Shortly after the Satrada Deeps campaign, Perturabo learned that his homeworld, Olympia, was in rebellion. Demikos was dead, and in his absence, the politicking and bickering of the city-states had resumed. Perturabo demanded the Olympians themselves enact decimation, killing 1 in every 10 of their own, or face extermination and enslavement. Many refused, and Perturabo purged Olympia city by city, overrunning the fortresses he had built and sparing no one. Iron warriors that refused to take part in the genocide suffered the same fate. By the time the massacre was over, 5 million Olympians had been killed and the rest put into slavery. While storming Logos' palace, Perturabo came across his old foster sister, Clyphene, and strangled her to death after a furious argument where she blamed the Primarch for what had befallen their world. As Olympia died, Perturabo looked on in cold silence. After the pyres were burning, the Iron Warriors realized what they had done. They were no more the saviors of the Imperium, destroying the Hrud one moment, and the next they were committing genocide. Perturabo realized the Emperor could never forgive him for what he had done. Horus, on the other hand, commended Perturabo for his decisive action, and the Lord of Iron swore an oath of loyalty to the War Master. Horus later made the most of the opportunity by presenting Perturabo with a hammer named Forgebreaker, the gift symbolic of signing of a pact between them. It was in that time that the disturbing news of the Horus Heresy and new orders came from Terra. Leman Russ and the Space Wolves had attacked Magnus and his 1,000 sons on Prospero. Horus had turned renegade with his legion, the son of Horus, besides some other legions. The whole Imperium was on the brink of a civil war. The new orders were to join with 6 other legions, and then to face Horus and his forces on Stand 5. The result of the following battle was that the Iron Warriors, Night Lords, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion all joined Horus, and almost completely destroyed the 3 remaining legions in the Dropsite Massacre. After that, the Iron Warriors were let loose, and Perturabo relished the opportunity to fight in a way they did not rely on massive sieges and trench warfare. Because of their massive deployment throughout the galaxy, dozens of warsmiths took over planets and demanded tithes to support the heresy. After the first siege of Hydra Quadratus, Perturabo was approached by Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's Children, who promised the Lord of Iron near unlimited power. The two embarked on a quest to tip the balance of the rebellion in Horus's favor by journeying into the Eye of Terra and retrieve a weapon known as the Angel Exterminatus. After a brief boarding action with the Sisypheum, which Perturabo allowed to escape due to his disgust of Fulgrim's legion, the duo arrived in the Eye of Terra and quickly landed on the Crone world of Idris. entering an ancient Eldar citadel known as the Amon Nishak Kalis. The Emperor's children and Iron Warriors had to contend with an army of Wraith God and Wraith Lords that had awoken from their slumber. At the height of the vicious battle, Fulgrim attempted to betray his brother and slip away, but was pursued by Perturabo. Both soon arrived in a massive spherical chamber, and Fulgrim revealed to his brother that there was no angel exterminatus, but he rather was destined to become such a weapon on this world. Furious, Perturabo attempted to attack Fulgrim, but was drained of his power when Fulgrim activated the Malgatar stone that Perturabo had previously received under the guise of a gift. Now with the Iron Warrior's Primarch's power in hand, Fulgrim revealed the purpose of his plan: to achieve apotheosis, better known as demonhood. However, just as Fulgrim was about to complete his ritual and achieve demonhood, Perturabo gathered enough strength to charge at his brother, but were interrupted by an ambush of salamanders, iron hands, and Raven Guard who had been stalking the Traitor fleet in search of vengeance since the Dropsite massacre. One of the loyalist Astartes during the battle shattered the Malgatar stone, freeing some of Perturabo's energy and giving him the ability to strike down Fulgrim with his Thunder Hammer. However, Perturabo only managed to destroy the Primarch's mortal skin and was reborn as a demon prince. Now a massive but elegant serpentine creature, Fulgrim told his brother that they would meet again, and then vanished in a burst of warp energy alongside his Emperor's children. Exhausted and betrayed by his brother, he knew, and now lost any trace of honor, Perturabo allowed the loyalist Astartes to withdraw and led his own forces off the Crone world, looking to settle the score with Fulgrim and better understand the cosmic power he had witnessed. Perturabo ordered his fleet to sail deep into the Eye of Terra. Perturabo and the Iron Warriors next found themselves trapped by the singularity in the heart of the Eye of Terra. Perturabo gambles in an attempt to escape, diving straight into the black hole at its heart. Perhaps by sheer blind luck, they were transported far across the warp to the Talon system. Once arriving at Talon, Perturabo was made aware of the black oculus hidden beneath the planet, and he immediately drew up plans to invade. Eventually, the Iron Warriors' search for the black oculus was exposed, and they were forced to withdraw from the planet. Following Talon, the Iron Warriors were ordered by Horus to man a defensive line of worlds in order to hold off the Ultramarines, which, with the death of the Ruin Storm, were advancing towards the Traitor's rear. Perturabo dutifully oversaw these vicious and bitter sieges. Overstretched and under-equipped, the Iron Warriors once again bled for worlds far from the center of the war without thanks. Perturabo at this point had grown weary and darker, both from the effects of Fulgrim's treachery and the corrupting effects of the Black Oculus. Perturabo's war on Creed was interrupted by Argonus, who brought orders from Horus to find Angron and bring both of their legions for the muster at Ulanor, in preparation for the drive on Terra. Despite having to abandon much of his forces, as well as worlds he had fought so bitterly for, Perturabo obeyed the War Master and journeyed to Serum with a small fleet in search of information of Angron's whereabouts. On Serum, the demon Saram revealed that Angron was on Deluge after possessing the body of Volk, creating the first Obliterator. Perturabo then traveled to Deluge, where he confronted the vicious and corrupted demon Primarch Angron. Perturabo and Angron engaged in a brutal battle, with the demon having the clear edge in power and speed. However, despite taking many wounds, Perturabo endured and goaded Angron, declaring that he was born a slave and was now a slave to darkness for all eternity. By using the Iron Warrior's Iron Circle and Volk to outmaneuver and bombard the World Eaters, Angron was bested as an Ultramarines fleet appeared in orbit over Deluge. Angron laughed and declared that they were all now going to die, but Perturabo reminded the demon Primarch that he had seen his warriors butchered while he had done nothing once before. This moved Angron enough to act, and after creating a warp storm, the Iron Warriors and World Eaters fleets were able to escape the Ultramarines and move to Ulanor, where they accompanied Horus for the muster. Perturabo proved to be a pivotal and primary traitor commander during the Solar War. During the campaign that captured the Sol system, he oversaw the capture of both Uranus and Jupiter defensive spheres from the Imperial Fists. During the early stages of the Siege of Terra, Perturabo was not allowed to lead the siege of the Imperial Palace, but instead fortify the Sol system against Guilliman's expected arrival, something that embittered him greatly. Nonetheless, the Lord of Iron was able to review bombardment data and surmise a weakness in the palace's void shield network. Horus later met with Perturabo personally aboard the Vengeful Spirit, where, while still compelled to obey Horus, he now saw the War Master as little more than a slave to the ruinous powers. Perturabo studied all warp he saw aboard the damned flagship, pledging to master the Empyrean and achieve powers similar to that of a god. Horus attempted to appeal to Perturabo's pride, emphasizing how much he had appreciated the Lord of Iron's contributions and how he was the only Primarch he could still trust. Perturabo was however still denying the coveted duty of besieging the palace, instead being ordered to clear landing zones for the traitor titans. After weeks of fighting, the traitor war effort stalled in the face of the walls of the palace, and the demon Primarchs proved aloof and unreliable. Horus thus relied on Perturabo to conduct the main offensive push into the Lion's Gate spaceport. Hoping to overcome Dawn's traps with bluntness, Perturabo put Kroger in charge of the ground offensive while inserting Forex and a unit of Iron Warriors behind enemy lines to seize key bridges into the spaceport. However, the attack stalled in the face of the Emperor's psychic shield of the palace, forcing Perturabo to rely on the Immaterium. By having Zardu Lilac and Typhus summon callbacks out of light to subvert the Imperial Palace's population. During the main assault on the Lion's Gate spaceport, Perturabo revealed that Forex and his men had been sacrificed as a ruse in order to draw away Imperial Fist defenses, in order to allow the Iron Blood to dock at the spaceport's main spire. As Perturabo sat down, Rogel Dawn met him on the field of battle. However, Perturabo refused to be goaded into battle by Dawn's taunts, knowing the Imperial Fist's Primarch simply intended to buy time for his troops to withdraw. Perturabo instead promised only after he had torn down the palace would he kill Dawn. Following the fall of Lion's Gate, Perturabo landed on Terra's surface and set up a command center to direct the siege. With Horus increasingly losing touch with the Materium, it fell to Perturabo to command the war effort, and he became the face of the enemy to the defenders of Terra. With the blessing of the War Master, Perturabo controlled his allies through command staff that consisted of Abaddon and the Mournival, Ahriman, Typhus, Eidolon, and Krostovak. Perturabo directly connected himself to the traitor data network, absorbing enormous quantities of data and directing every facet of the siege with his own mind. In this state, commanding the greatest siege in history, Abaddon suspected that Perturabo was finally happy. In an uncharacteristically good mood, Perturabo praised Abaddon when he noticed the same flaw in the Saturnine Gate that he had recently also discovered. However, Perturabo was worried that Dawn also knew of the flaw, and exploiting it would be a trap by his brother. As a result, he allowed Abaddon and the Emperor's children to attack Saturnine and suffer the losses and humiliation that would come with it should the assault fail. Sure enough, Dawn had known of the flaw and ambushed the traitors as they attacked. After the setback of Saturnine, Perturabo began to despair over the state of his allies. All save he and the Iron Warriors had by now fully fallen to chaos, and with his warriors marched all kinds of warp abominations. Perturabo realized that the war was no longer one of legion versus legion, and the ultimate test against his brother Rogel was now tainted. The final straw for Perturabo came after Horus informed him that he was to disperse his Iron Warriors amongst the various war zones, and that his position was now to be taken over by Mortarion and the Death God. Finally, having had enough, Perturabo ordered the Iron Warriors to evacuate Terra and withdrew to the Iron Blood. After fleeing Terra following Horus's death, Perturabo took the opportunity to take vengeance on the Imperial Fists with a trap on Sebastius IV. The trap was known as the Eternal Fortress, a keep centered within 20 square miles of bunkers, towers, minefields, trenches, tank traps, and redoubts. Upon hearing of this, Rogel Dawn publicly Perturabo out of his hole and bring him to Terra in an iron cage. Rogaldorn expected an honorable battle, but this was not to be. Beginning by isolating the four companies of the Imperial Fists from their orbital support, Perturabo began to carefully divide his enemy and destroy them. Some Imperial Fists managed to penetrate the defenses and reach the center of the Eternal Fortress, only to find that there was no central keep, simply an open space watched yet by more defenses. The fortress was a decoy of no real value, surrounded by 20 miles of killing ground. By the 6th day of the siege, Imperial Fist Space Marines were fighting individually, without support, using the bodies of their own battle brothers for cover. The siege of the Eternal Fortress, later referred to as the Iron Cage Incident, lasted for a further 3 weeks. Relief came in the form of Robute Gilliman and the Ultramarines, who drove off the Iron Warriors, but the siege left Rogaldorn a broken man and rendered the Imperial Fist chapter unable to fight for 19 years. The gene seed of over 400 Imperial Fists was sacrificed to the Dark Gods, and Perturabo was elevated to the rank of Demon Prince of Chaos Undivided. Following this victory, the Iron Warriors fled to the Eye of Terra and secured a new demon world named Mendragard, crafting a terrible fortress world where his soldiers ruled in vast towers. Perturabo's stronghold, the Fortress of Hate, is said to be the most redoubtable of all the fortress worlds. Today, the Iron Warriors give their greatest loyalty to Perturabo for saving them from the sacrifice in the name of the Emperor. In the year 432, Perturabo emerged once more to wreak havoc. Invoking Nurgle, Perturabo imbued an extremely contagious curse and released it into the mechanical systems on the Forge World of Toil. The Chaos Plague spread through the machines, and factory complexes changed over the course of 8 days. On the 8th day, giant cables burst from the ground, spewing forth hungry demon engines, while the factories themselves grew legs and prowled the planet's surface. All life on Toil was eventually annihilated. In early M39, Perturabo aided Abaddon the Despoiler in the 10th Black Crusade by opening a war portal for the Black Legion. Perturabo spent much of the subsequent millennia studying the defenses of Segmentum Obscurus and establishing a network of techno-cultist informants. After the 13th Black Crusade and the formation of the Great Rift, Perturabo unleashed 1,000 armies and coordinated them in a grand strategy against the most heavily defended worlds in Obscurus. During this time, he appeared to fight his brother Mortarion in the War of Rust and Ruin. Perturabo fought with an extensive war gear set. His primary weapon during the Heresy was the Thunderhammer Forgebreaker, a weapon that had previously belonged to Ferrus Manus before being given to him as a gift by Fulgrim. For protection, Perturabo wore a highly modified suit of cataphracti patterned Terminator armor, known as the Logos. One of the most advanced suits of its age, it was equipped with a variety of support systems as well as a teleport beacon. The Logos was also equipped with a pair of 4-barreled wrist-mounted cannons. On the battlefield, Perturabo would sometimes ride a modified shadow sword known as Tormentor. This concludes the information regarding Perturabo. More in-depth information regarding him will be recorded at a later date. This is Librarian Elias, signing off.